On April 8, 1943, 27,000 feet above Caen, France Oberleutnant Ralph Hermaken of Jagdgeschwader 26 smirked behind his oxygen mask as he watched the awkward silhouettes of American fighters, struggling to climb toward his formation through the clear canopy of his Focke-Wulf 190A5. "The enemy has sent us flying milk bottles," he joked to his wingman, amused by the sight of the bulky Republic P-47 Thunderbolts laboring for altitude. To German pilots accustomed to sleek Spitfires and agile Soviet fighters, these massive American machines looked almost comical, barrel-bodied, short-winged, and fronted by enormous propellers unlike anything in the Luftwaffe's arsenal. What Hermaken and his comrades could not know was that they were witnessing the arrival of the aircraft that would ultimately devastate the Luftwaffe's fighter arm. Within 18 months, the same flying milk bottles would evolve from objects of ridicule into instruments of destruction. Armed with 850 caliber Browning machine guns delivering over 6,000 rounds per minute, the Thunderbolt possessed the raw firepower to tear a Messerschmitt in half within seconds. That April morning marked the beginning of a transformation in air combat. Major Donald Blakesley, leading the 335th Fighter Squadron, understood that survival in the P-47 required new tactics. Altitude, power, and firepower would replace agility and finesse. Unlike the lightweight German interceptors optimized for maneuvering, the Thunderbolt was a high-altitude juggernaut built on brute strength and industrial might. Among the 56 American pilots who took to the skies over France that day were men destined to become legends, though at that moment they were inexperienced rookies facing Germany's finest. The P-47's story was born from urgency in 1940, when Republic Aviation's chief designer, Alexander Kartveli, responding to U.S. Army demands, created a fighter so massive it was dubbed a dinosaur, yet one with perfect proportions. Powered by the 2,000-horsepower Pratt Whitney R-2800 double wasp engine and equipped with a revolutionary turbo supercharger system, it thrived at altitudes where German fighters faltered. Though the Thunderbolt's early days were marred by accidents and pilot fatalities during training, those who mastered it discovered a machine of extraordinary resilience and power. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a future ace, would later recall that flying the P-47 was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. In its first combats that spring, the Thunderbolt seemed outmatched, unable to turn or climb with German fighters, but beneath its ungainly frame lay the future of air superiority, forged from America's unmatched industrial and engineering strength. The P-47s couldn't turn with the Focke-Wulf 190s, couldn't climb with the Messerschmitt 109s, couldn't match their nimble handling at medium altitudes. Luftwaffe pilots quickly developed tactics to exploit these weaknesses, attacking from below where the heavy Thunderbolts struggled, forcing turning fights where agility mattered more than firepower. Hutchman Isef Pips Priller, commanding officer of Jagdgeschwader 26, reported to headquarters after his first encounter. "The new American fighter is meat for the slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, and climbs like a pregnant cow. Our boys are calling them Indiana, fat targets pretending to be warriors." The statistics seem to confirm German confidence. In their first month of operations, the American fighter groups lost 14 Thunderbolts for only 3 confirmed German kills. The RAF, observing from their Spitfire squadrons, quietly suggested the Americans might reconsider their choice of mount. British pilots joked that the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was to unstrap and run around the roomy cockpit. But something strange was happening in those early encounters that German intelligence failed to notice. The P-47s that were shot down had absorbed incredible punishment before falling. One aircraft returned from a May 4th mission with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes, damage that would have disintegrated a Messerschmitt or Spitfire. The massive radial engine-lacking vulnerable coolant systems shrugged off hits that would have stopped a liquid-cooled fighter cold. More significantly, when P-47s did get their guns on target, the results were catastrophic. The Thunderbolt's weapons battery created a convergence zone of destruction that German pilots had never experienced. Unlike the rifle-caliber weapons of fierce warfighters or the cannon with limited ammunition, the American fighter could maintain sustained fire for over 30 seconds, an eternity in aerial combat. The event that would begin changing German perceptions occurred on June 26, 1943, over Lazo, France. It involved Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron, and an encounter that would become legendary on both sides of the conflict. Johnson's formation of 48 P-47s was returning from escort duty when they were bounced by 16 Focke-Wulf 190s from 2 Aegis 26, led by Headman Wilhelm Ferdinand Galland, younger brother of the famous Adolf Galland. The Germans executed a perfect attack, diving from the sun with overwhelming speed advantage. Johnson's Thunderbolt, flying at the rear of the formation, was caught in the crossfire of multiple attackers, taking catastrophic damage in the first seconds of combat. Multiple cannon shells exploded across his aircraft. The canopy shattered, hydraulic fluid sprayed into the cockpit. The engine cowling was torn away, and fire erupted behind the instrument panel. Johnson, wounded in the nose and leg by shrapnel and bullet fragments, tried to bail out, but discovered the canopy was jammed. A 20mm shell had exploded in the canopy track, welding it shut. He was trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 ha left. What happened next defied every assumption about combat damage tolerance. Despite having no forward visibility through the oil-covered windscreen, a barely functioning engine that shook violently, and controls that responded only intermittently, Johnson managed to level the aircraft and point it toward England. The P-47 continued flying with damage that would have reduced any other fighter to falling debris. Then it got worse. A lone Focke-Wulf Fw 190, flown by an unknown pilot from 2JG-26, discovered the crippled Thunderbolt limping toward the channel at less than 170 meters. Historical research has never definitively identified this pilot, though several names have been proposed based on German combat reports from that day. What followed was one of the most extraordinary encounters in aerial warfare history. The German pilot positioned himself behind Johnson's P-47 and opened fire with his 420mm cannon and two 13mm machine guns. Johnson, unable to evade, could only huddle behind his armor plate and pray. The Thunderbolt absorbed the entire cannon ammunition load. Then the German repositioned and fired again, this time with only his machine guns. The cannon ammunition exhausted, the German pilot pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck. Johnson could see his face clearly, young, blonde, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. The German repositioned and emptied his remaining machine gun ammunition into the Thunderbolt. Still, it flew. He pulled alongside again, shook his head in apparent amazement, gave an informal salute, and peeled away, presumably out of ammunition. Johnson's P-47 landed at Manston with its engine failing on the runway. The crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after reaching 200. One cannon shell had exploded inches from Johnson's head. Another had detonated against the armor plate behind his seat. The engine had taken direct hits. The control cables were partially severed. 3 of the 4 main longerons, the structural backbone of the fuselage, were shot through. Yet the aircraft had brought him home. The survival of Johnson's aircraft sent shockwaves through both air forces. American engineers studying the wreckage realized they had underestimated their own creation. German intelligence receiving combat reports from 2nd Section of Jägerschwader 26 initially refused to believe it. No aircraft could absorb that much punishment, but testimony from multiple pilots confirmed the impossible. The Thunderbolt had taken everything the Luftwaffe's best fighter could deliver and survived. By July 1943, American pilots were learning to exploit the P-47's true strengths. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zena, the 56th Fighter Group commander, had discovered the secret through brutal trial and error. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight. Use your power. Use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight, initially seen as a disadvantage, became a weapon. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 ft, a P-47 could reach 550 mph faster than any German fighter could achieve, even in a vertical dive. This speed could be converted to altitude in a zoom climb that left pursuing fighters helplessly behind. Captain Walker Bard-Mahurin, who would become one of the first American aces in Europe, developed what became known as the boom and zoom tactic, though pilots called it the Thunderbolt turkey shoot. Instead of engaging in traditional dogfights, P-47 formations would climb to 30,000 ft, higher than German fighters could effectively operate. When Luftwaffe fighters appeared below, the Thunderbolts would roll inverted and dive, reaching speeds that made a deflection shooting impossible for defending Germans. At the bottom of these dives, the American heavy machine guns would speak. German pilots who survived described it as facing a wall of lead, the combined firepower creating an impenetrable zone of destruction. Aircraft caught in this convergence pattern didn't just fall, they disintegrated. The true revelation of American firepower came during the August 17, 1943 dual raid on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the deepest penetration into Germany attempted to that date. This mission would demonstrate both the P-47's limitations, its range even with drop tanks, and its terrifying effectiveness when employed properly. Major David Schilling, leading the 62nd Fighter Squadron, encountered a formation of Messerschmitt 110 destroyer aircraft positioning to attack B-17s with their heavy cannon and rocket armament. The twin-engine German fighters, heavily armed but less maneuverable, were the Luftwaffe's specialized bomber killers. Schilling's flight of 4 Thunderbolts rolled into their attack dive from 28,000 ft Unoffizier Hinrich Roth, a gunner in one of the Mi-10s who survived, later recounted in a P interrogation. The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven. I opened fire at 800 HM. Good hits. I saw them strike the fighter's wing. The P-47 didn't even wobble. Then he fired. The aircraft ahead of us simply came apart. Not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from fuselage, tails severed. The crew compartment shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds, a 110 became nothing. 8 Mess's 100s and 10s were destroyed in less than a minute. The German pilots had never experienced such concentrated firepower. Each P-47 carried 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 rounds total, weighing nearly 900 lb. At convergence distance, typically set at 300 yd, all 8 guns' ballistic paths intersected in a zone roughly 6 ft in diameter. Anything in that zone faced 100 in projectiles per second, each traveling at 2,900 ft/s. The ammunition itself was a revelation of American industrial capacity. While German fighters struggled with limited cannon ammunition, typically 120 to 200 rounds for a 20mm weapon, American pilots could maintain fire for over half a minute. The standard combat load, mixed armor-piercing incendiary, armor-piercing incendiary tracer, and standard ball ammunition in patterns designed to both destroy and ignite. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabby Gabreski, who would become the top American ace in Europe with 28 victories, described the effect. When you hit them with all 8, they don't just go down, they explode. Iowa 109 literally cut in half, the tail falling one way, the nose and wings another. The pilot never knew what hit him. By September 1943, the Luftwaffe was discovering another horrifying reality about the P-47. Its performance improved dramatically with altitude while German fighters suffered. The turbo-supercharged double Wasp engine maintained its rated power output up to 30,000 ft. German fighters relying on single-stage or two-stage mechanical superchargers saw their performance degrade significantly above 25,000 ft. Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 206 victories, encountered this reality fatally on October 8, 1943. Leading Jagdgeschwader 1 against a B-17 formation at 28,000 ft over Bremond, Philipp found his Focke-Wulf 190 A6 sluggish and unresponsive in the thin air. The BMW 801 engine, powerful at medium altitudes, was gasping for oxygen nearly 6 mi above the Earth. When P-47s of the 56th Fighter Group dove on his formation from 32,000 ft, the German fighters were sitting ducks. Robert Johnson, now an experienced combat pilot on his way to ace status, was flying at 31,000 ft when he spotted Philipp's distinctive Focke-Wulf with its elaborate nose art. Johnson's combat report was clinical. Opened fire at 300 yd 30° deflection. Observed strikes along entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. Philipp's death sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe. If one of their best, a man who had survived over 500 combat missions on both eastern and western fronts, couldn't survive against the Thunderbolts, what chance did average pilots have? The German High Command ordered an immediate investigation into the P-47's capabilities. The report delivered to Reich Marshal Hermann Göring in November 1943 was sobering. The Thunderbolt service ceiling exceeded 42,000 ft higher than any German fighter could reach. Its dive speed approached the sound barrier. Its armor included a 3/8 in steel plate behind the pilot, 1/2 in bulletproof glass windscreen, and armored deflection plates around the engine. Most disturbingly, its rugged construction allowed it to absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. In January 1944, a new variant of the P-47 began arriving in England that would complete the transformation from laughingstock to nightmare. The P-47 D-22 featured a Hamilton standard hydroatic propeller with paddle blades 13 ft in diameter, with broad chord blades that bite into the air like massive OEs. The improvement in climb rate was immediate and dramatic. Where earlier Thunderbolts had climbed at an anemic 2,200 ft per minute at sea level, the paddle blade variants could achieve 3,000 ft per minute, matching or exceeding German fighters at most altitudes. The massive propeller also improved acceleration, allowing P-47s to build energy faster in level flight. Hedman Heinz Knoker of Jagdgeschwader 11, a veteran with over 200 combat missions, encountered the new variants in February 1944 during a bomber interception near Hanover. He wrote in his combat diary, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb. We bounced a formation near Hanover, expecting our usual advantage." The Thunderbolts were no longer the clumsy machines German pilots had once mocked. When they turned to engage, the P-47s climbed with them effortlessly, pursuing even to 30,000 feet. German pilot Schmidt was blown apart mid-air, nothing left but smoke and debris. The new paddle blade propeller not only improved performance, but also gave the Thunderbolt its unmistakable voice, a deep, thundering roar produced by supersonic propeller tips. German troops on the ground soon learned to recognize that sound, calling it Donnerschlag, thunderclap, a warning of death from above. By March 1944, with external fuel tanks extending their range beyond 1,000 miles, P-47s could escort bombers deep into Germany. Their new propellers gave them the power to fight immediately after jettisoning their tanks, and attacks against the bomber formations became suicidal. German ace Major Gunther Rall, with 275 victories, survived an encounter with Thunderbolts that left him wounded and shaken. He recalled, "We laughed when we saw them coming, fat silhouettes against the sun. 30 seconds later, 3 of our fighters were gone, torn apart by streams of fire." The P-47's endurance further enhanced its dominance, as the big radial engines consumed less fuel at high altitude, allowing hours of escort duty. As P-51 Mustangs assumed long-range escort duties, the P-47 found new purpose as the Allies prepared for the invasion of France in 1944. Its 850 caliber machine guns proved devastating in ground attack roles, shredding vehicles and armor with armor-piercing incendiary ammunition. Later variants, such as the P-47 D-25, carried up to 2,500 pounds of bombs and 10 5-inch rockets, making the Thunderbolt a flying artillery platform. German troops dubbed it the Jabo, fighter bomber, but its accuracy and destructive power made it something more. During the Normandy campaign, German officer Hans von Luck described P-47 attacks as terrifying, with rockets screaming and machine guns hammering as entire convoys were obliterated in seconds. By D-Day, June 6, 1944, over 500 Thunderbolts blanketed the skies above Normandy, annihilating German fighters and securing air superiority. In the weeks that followed, P-47s crippled German logistics, destroying thousands of trains, trucks, tanks, and vehicles, forcing the Wehrmacht to move only under cover of night. Attempts to counter the Thunderbolt failed. Even the formidable 88mm flak guns struggled to hit the fast, low-flying attackers. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the P-47 proved equally formidable. The 348th Fighter Group under Colonel Neil Kirby adapted the aircraft to the vast distances of the theater, where it devastated Japanese air power. Japanese ace Saburo Sakai called them monsters, describing how his cannon shells seemed useless against their rugged armor. The long-range P-47 variant, with extended fuel capacity, escorted B-29s all the way to Japan. The Thunderbolt even confronted Germany's revolutionary jet fighter, the Me-262. On November 27, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer of the 352nd Fighter Group downed one by diving from altitude at nearly 500 knots price, its 8 50-caliber guns shredding the jet to pieces. Later P-47M variants, powered by 2,800 horsepower engines with water methanol injection, reached 470 knots and were deployed to intercept jets and V-1 flying bombs. As Major George Bostwick summarized, "The jets were faster, but they couldn't turn and couldn't take punishment. One burst from our guns and they came apart like paper. That's when we get them." The ultimate demonstration of American industrial might came during Operation Boden-Platter, the Luftwaffe's desperate attempt to destroy Allied air power on January 1, 1945. Nearly 900 German fighters, including their best remaining pilots, launched surprise attacks on Allied airfields across Belgium and the Netherlands. At Y-34 airfield near Metz, home to the 365th Fighter Group's P-47s, the attack initially succeeded. German fighters destroyed 22 Thunderbolts on the ground along with several other aircraft. A captured German pilot brought to the command post pointed at the burning aircraft and taunted, "What do you think of that?" Major George Brooking's response became legendary throughout the 9th Air Force. He pointed to the flight line where ground crews were already pushing damaged aircraft aside and preparing hard stands for replacements. "By tomorrow, we'll have 40 new ones. How long will it take you to replace your pilots?" The German pilot's smirk disappeared. Within 48 hours, factory-fresh P-47 D-40s filled the flight line. Flown in from depots in England, the Luftwaffe lost 271 aircraft and 213 pilots in Boden-Platter, including many irreplaceable instructors and squadron leaders. These losses they could never replace. The Americans lost 134 aircraft total across all attacked airfields, all replaced within a week. The numbers told the story of inevitable defeat. Republic Aviation produced 15,683 P-47s during the war, more than any other American fighter. At peak production, the Farmingdale factory on Long Island completed one Thunderbolt every hour around the clock. The Evansville plant in Indiana, built from empty farmland in 1942, was producing 500 aircraft per month by 1944. Each P-47D required 65,000 individual parts, 8 mi of electrical wiring, 2,000 lb of aluminum, and 300 lb of rubber. The engine alone contained 2,400 individual components, machined to tolerances of thousandth of an inch. Yet, American workers, many of them women who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assembled these complex machines with precision that exceeded peacetime standards. The ammunition production was equally staggering. Each P-47 sortie required 3,400 rounds of 50-caliber ammunition with hundreds of Thunderbolts flying daily missions. Ammunition consumption exceeded 10 million rounds per month by mid-1944. The Lake City Arsenal in Missouri, one of several ammunition plants, produced 30 million rounds monthly. Each cartridge was manufactured to tolerances measured in 10,000 of an inch, ensuring reliable feeding through the synchronized gun mechanisms. The fuel consumption was enormous. Each Thunderbolt burned 100 gall per hour in normal flight, up to 300 gall in combat with water injection engaged. The 9th Air Force alone consumed over 25 million gallons of aviation fuel monthly by late 1944. all of it shipped across the Atlantic in tankers that were themselves products of American mass production. Even more impressive than aircraft production was pilot training. By 1944, the United States was graduating 30,000 pilots annually from advanced training, more than Germany had trained in the entire war. Each P-47 pilot received a minimum of 400 hours of flight training before entering combat, including 100 hours in advanced fighters. German pilots, by contrast, were entering combat with less than 100 hours total time by war's end. The quality showed in combat. American pilots arrived in Europe trained in formation flying, instrument navigation, gunnery, and tactics. They had practiced against captured German aircraft, understanding their enemy's capabilities and limitations. They knew their aircraft systems intimately, having studied technical manuals that German pilots never received. Lieutenant Eugene Roberts, arriving in England in September 1944, exemplified the American training advantage. I had 420 hours in my logbook, including 75 hours in the P-47. I'd fired at towed targets, practiced deflection shooting, studied gun camera film from actual combat. My first mission, I knew exactly what to do. The German pilot I faced couldn't have had half my experience. It wasn't even a fair fight. In March 1945, Oberstleutnant Isef Priller, the same pilot who had mocked the P-47s as pregnant cows 2 years earlier, was interviewed by German propaganda officials seeking to boost morale. His statement, deemed too demoralizing for publication, revealed the complete transformation in German attitudes. The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. Its firepower is unprecedented. Weapons that never jam, never overheat, never run out of ammunition in normal combat. It carries bombs like a medium bomber, fires rockets like artillery, and fights like a fighter when needed. But beyond the machine is what it represents: unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20, we lose 1, it's gone forever. Their pilots arrive better trained than our instructors. They have fuel for training, ammunition for practice, spare parts for everything. We have nothing but courage, and courage without resources is just delayed defeat. Well off at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, you know death has come calling. The sound haunts us. Mechanical, precise, unstoppable. Like everything American, it's about overwhelming material superiority. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead. By April 1945, the Luftwaffe existed largely on paper. Fuel shortages grounded most aircraft. Experienced pilots were dead or captured. Airfields were cratered ruins. But even with aircraft and fuel, German pilots faced an impossible equation. Attacking meant facing P-47 formations that owned every altitude from ground level to 40,000 feet. Feldwebel Klaus Brechender, one of the last German pilots trained in 1945, flew exactly one combat mission before the war ended. His encounter with P-47s over Leipzig lasted 12 seconds. I saw them diving from above, 4 Thunderbolts in perfect formation. I tried to turn, but they were too fast. The leader fired from 500 Mautuenen. My aircraft shook like it was hit by sledgehammers. The engine exploded, the wings separated. I barely escaped. In the parachute, I watched them destroy my entire staff. 6 fighters gone in under a minute. 6 fighters gone in under a minute. Thesky rained, burning aluminum and bodies. The psychological impact was complete. German pilots developed what medical officers called Jabo fever, physical symptoms of stress appearing when Thunderbolts were reported in the area. Veterans who had faced Spitfires and Hurricanes without fear became physically ill before missions against P-47s. The distinctive thunder of approaching Thunderbolts caused panic among ground troops who knew that survival meant finding cover immediately. The final statistics of P-47 operations defied comprehension. In Europe, 3,352 German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,315 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 6,000 armored fighting vehicles destroyed, 68,000 trucks destroyed, 60,000 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed in the Pacific, 697 Japanese aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 150 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 1,500 vehicles destroyed, 150 locomotives destroyed, countless barges, ships, and installations. The 9th Air Force alone, primarily equipped with P-47s, flew two 13,873 combat sorties, dropped 120,000 tons of bombs, fired 135 million rounds of ammunition, and launched 60,000 rockets. The Thunderbolt units achieved a 4.6.1 kill ratio in aerial combat while maintaining the lowest loss rate of any Allied fighter-bomber. Behind these numbers lay the human cost. The Luftwaffe lost approximately 28,000 pilots killed in combat against Western Allied forces. Many fell to the concentrated fire of American heavy machine guns. Each loss represented years of training that Germany could never replace. By war's end, the average German fighter pilot had less than 30 hours of combat experience. The average P-47 pilot had over 200. At the Luftwaffe Interrogation Center at Ober-Ursel, captured Allied pilots were debriefed by German intelligence. The records captured in 1945 revealed German assessments of Allied aircraft. The file on the P-47, updated continuously throughout the war, showed the complete reversal of opinion. April 1943, large, unmaneuverable fighter, inferior to German types in all performance parameters except dive speed. Machine gun armament insufficient against cannon-armed fighters. Assessment minimal threat. December 1943. Exceptional high-altitude performance. Extreme structural strength. Firepower increasingly problematic. Pilots showing improved tactics. Assessment. Significant threat above $25,000 after June 1944. Dominant fighter bomber. Superior to all German types above 20,000-foot firepower, devastating against all target types. Structural strength makes shootdown extremely difficult. Assessment. Critical threat at all altitudes. March 1945. Best fighter bomber of the war. Combination of firepower, durability, and performance unmatched. Pilot quality exceptional assessment, unsurvivable in direct engagement. In 1985, at a reunion of German and American fighter pilots in Phoenix, Arizona, former adversaries met in peace. General Lieutenant Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, was asked about the P-47. His response, recorded on video, captured the complete transformation. "We made a terrible mistake in 1943. We saw this big heavy fighter and laughed. The Americans don't understand air combat. We said they built a bomber and called it a fighter. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one designed around production, firepower, and survivability. They understood that in a war of attrition, the plane that could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower would win. They were right. The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible. It climbed like it was falling upward. The cockpit was comfortable. The visibility excellent. The controls precise. It was a pilot's aircraft wrapped in armor. But what really impressed me was realizing that America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a Tuscan war. Each one required an engine more complex than anything Germany produced. Yet they built them faster than we could build simple fighters. That's when I knew we never had a chance. Those guns, we called them Roosevelt's piano because of the sound they made. Once you heard that sound, you never forgot it. Many of my friends heard it for the last time. The P-47 didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, it destroyed it. The P-47's design represented American industrial philosophy perfectly. Brute force engineering backed by unlimited resources. Every component was overbuilt, overpowered, and over-engineered. The wing spars could support 40,000 lb, 3 times the aircraft's loaded weight. The engine mount could withstand 12 light forces. The control cables were doubled throughout with automatic backup systems. The ammunition feed system alone was a marvel of engineering. 8 separate ammunition boxes, each holding 425 rounds, fed through electric boost motors to prevent jamming during hygiene maneuvers. The guns were electrically heated to prevent freezing at altitude. Each gun had its own charging mechanism and could be individually synchronized. The convergence was adjustable from 150 to 400 yd, allowing pilots to optimize for their preferred engagement range. Even after the war, some German veterans maintained that the P-47 won through quantity, not quality. The German fighters were technically superior but overwhelmed by numbers. The combat records tell a different story. In engagements where numbers were equal, P-47s consistently prevailed. The heavy machine gun armament, dismissed as inferior to cannon, proved more effective in actual combat. Analysis of gun camera footage revealed why cannon shells, while individually more destructive, required precise aim and had limited ammunition, typically 120 to 200 rounds total. The P-47 Thunderbolts weapons created a near-certain kill probability, even with imperfect aim. A brief burst at typical engagement ranges delivered enough rounds to destroy a fighter-sized target, while the American .50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary ammunition penetrated before detonating, with incendiary compounds burning at 3,000 degrees Fw, enough to ignite aluminum airframes. By contrast, German 20mm shells, though heavier, often exploded on contact, producing spectacular but sometimes superficial damage. The Thunderbolt itself was the heaviest single-engine piston fighter ever mass-produced, with an empty weight of 10,000 pounds, more than the gross weight of some twin-engine fighters, and an engine producing more power than entire bomber formations from previous wars. Its firepower exceeded that of a squad of infantry. Yet these machines were built by the thousands, flown by young pilots barely out of high school, and maintained in combat by mechanics trained in mere weeks. In less than 2 years, German opinion shifted from mockery to terror. Veterans who had faced Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Soviet Yaks spoke of P-47s in hushed tones decades later. A restored P-47D at the United States Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, tells the story not through specifications or honors, but through spent .50 caliber shells and gun camera footage showing a Focke-Wulf 190 disintegrating under fire. A German pilot's post-war words capture the transformation. "We laughed when we first saw them. Fat, ugly American fighters that couldn't turn, couldn't climb, couldn't fight. We stopped laughing when we realized they didn't need to turn or climb. They just pointed those guns at you, and you ceased to exist." Entering combat as an object of derision, the P-47 ended the war as an instrument of annihilation. 8 synchronized Browning machine guns had rewritten aerial warfare, burying the Luftwaffe under a storm of lead. By May 1945, the laughter had died. The thunder had spoken, and the skies belonged to America. And the skies belonged to America.